What is one invention that we'd be better off without? I mostly use cotton because I live in India and I'll die if I wear something any warmer, but fast fashion is practically all I own. Zara is a fancy brand here. H&M is good for middle-class people. Sustainable clothing costs $25K for a single shirt, and that's just not affordable for most people. I don't remember any shirt I've worn for less than 4 years unless it straight up tears or gets stained. I have a few fast fashion shirts my sister got nearly 10 years ago that I still use to this day. The issue is the focus on trends and the need to keep up with them. If bell sleeves are only going to be in for 6 months, then a shirt with those sleeves will be worthless for people who try to keep up with trends. We need to collectively stop caring about what magazines and influencers tell us about trends and just wear things to the end of their natural lifespan. In the 1950s, a new pesticide under the brand name Amiton entered the market but was found to be a little bit too toxic for safe use in fields. So the inquiring minds at Portdown put it to better use and rebranded it as the V-Series, the first of these being VG, since followed by the much more common and infamous VX. So in a way its development was intended to help people by protecting huge commercial crops, a solution to world hunger as it were. The good ones are user-friendly, accept all, decline all. The shitty ones make you go through a dark pattern of menace. They're required under EU law, but making them shitty is a choice. Edit. Welp, I think I've just confirmed Cunningham's law. The best way to get the right answer on the internet is not to ask a question, it's to post the wrong answer. I'll leave my original reply unedited for posterity. Regardless, the way a lot of those pop-ups are implemented sucks. The guy who invented it proved to the media that it was totally safe by ingesting lead and having them do a urine test on him. Since lead stays in your body forever and isn't cleared through excretions, of course his urine test was totally clear. He also invented CFCs for use in refrigeration, and thus contributed mightily to the depletion of the ozone layer. But in the end, he developed polio and died horribly, strangled to death by a bed he invented to help get in and out of bed due to the disease. We have a telescope that's thousands of dollars and a place that makes it refuses to have any replacement parts and won't let anyone else make them. Edit. I clarified with my husband and he said, if you're the first owner apparently they will provide parts, but if you're not then they won't allow you to buy parts from them and nobody else can. Does make parts. Given a lot of people buy astrophotography stuff second-hand, it's really a disservice to the community. I honestly do not understand why people are fans of these shows and enjoy going. I feel bad for the children who are forced to participate because a lot of the times, the mothers make them wear inappropriate clothing, or sometimes force them to change their body even though a lot of the times, the kids are like 4 years old. There was once an episode of Toddlers in Tears where a mom forced her kids to bleach their hair and teeth at only 2 and 5 years old. I was shocked at how these kids had to do this to their bodies at such a young age since they are still growing. I went to one in the early 2000s with a friend. I wasn't really interested, but her niece, I think, was a competitor. I figured it'd be some cutesy kid garbage, which I was not into. But whatever, I was there to support a friend. I'll never forget how floor-jawed I was when these prepubescent girls started strutting around on stage to my legs, my back, my pee and my crack, and everyone around me was acting as though this were perfectly normal. I'd hoped it was just some weird one-off thing, but then that show came out a few years later. Still blows my mind that any parent is okay with sexualizing their kids like that. We have LED traffic lights here and the glare from them is ridiculous. I can understand them on high-speed roads where seeing a red light from a distance matters, but they've installed them in small 30 miles per hour roads, residential areas. It's like looking at a red, green traffic flare. Same as the LED streetlights that have recently turned night into day on my street. Completely unnecessary. The sodium light level was fine, and now we need blackout curtains at the front of the house, with something to pin them at the sides of the window. I get that the LEDs are energy efficient, but they could be a tenth as bright and still do the job. landmines. I'll tell you why. They render large tracts of land completely unusable. They are expensive and difficult to remove safely because there is seldom documentation of where they are placed. They are cheap, plentiful, easy to place, and deadly. They kill, maim livestock and wild animals. They kill, maim innocent people decades after conflicts have ended. Many times the victims are children because they can't read or don't understand warning signs. I believe that current U.S. policy is that they no longer use mines that do not self-detonate outside of the Korean DMZ. There is an exception carved out for Special Operations Forces, but those guys aren't dropping minefields like anybody here is thinking. The U.S. has had a policy of documenting the locations of each mine they lay and recovering them since at least the 80s. The only exception to that rule are mines that self-detonate. Source: I've filled out target folders for minefields. We even had them in Desert Storm if needed. Playing in minefields and blowing stuff up are the two highlights of my job. The country I live in has tons of these planted in land. Some areas are just too risky to go to, and these are big chunks of land. Who is ever going to take out these landmines? It takes time, effort and money. As a kid I wandered around in nature a lot, where some major fights occurred, regularly entering vacant war-torn houses with my childhood friends, but luckily nothing ever happened. In some other places, people could sometimes find mines in their backyards. So yes, it's the most terrible thing ever invented. My uncle was a minesweeper in South Africa. His PTSD and anxiety was so bad that his entire body would shake on such a consistent basis that it was hard to sit on the same couch as him. He died at the age of 53 from all the things he put in his body to try to make himself forget. Terrifying stuff. And for what? I'll have to agree with you. There's a wilderness area local to me that is full of unexplored ordnance. From WEI testing, I'd still call it a wilderness, but it's certainly not untouched. I do search and rescue, and it's definitely concerning to me to think about how someone could stumble off trail and get blown up, as if getting lost in the wilderness isn't dangerous enough on its own. In Libya, today nearly 80 years after the end of WW2 within its borders, the landmines left by the Allied and Axis powers render large areas of land useless, and still innocent victims fall from these mines every year. More recently, Haftar, a rogue, previously retired officer, also planted countless landmines around Tripoli when he attempted to take over in 2019-2020, and he was very much helped by the UE, France, Egypt, and Russian mercenaries. At the very least, landmines should have self-deactivation timers, so that they disarm themselves after a set period of time, maybe 1 year, maybe 5 years, whatever, so that after that period of time, you can again say it's safe to go into that area. Well, mostly safe. There's always a chance that a few of the timers malfunctioned. This will always and forever be my answer. There are many things that we, as humans, would be better off without, but so few do so much harm to the most innocent for so many generations. It renders a country completely unable to repair itself until all of those deadly mines are gone. It keeps the trauma of a war fresh for many years long after that war has ended. Few things devastate my soul so much as the history and present reality of landmines. What about all the other countries? As part of building their Atlantic Wall, Germany seeded France with millions of mines and landmines. Now add to that the fact that France was a battleground for much of WWI and WEI. This is actually part of why the French government capitulated to the Germans so quickly, in part because the Germans rushed past French defenses before the French could turn and catch up to them, so they were behind the French lines before the French could respond. But also because France didn't want to have to fight another major war in their own country so soon, since they were still rebuilding after WWI. The French had planned to pin the Germans down in Belgium and force them to fight their way through Belgium first. However, instead of taking 2 weeks or more to cross through Belgium, which would have given the French plenty of time to plan and redeploy, the Germans zipped through a part of Belgium that had been thought impassable, and they did so in only a few days. Basically, Germany shot for a part of the net that the French goalie hadn't expected and couldn't reach in time, so the Germans scored, and France chose to begrudgingly accept it because otherwise they would have been destroying their country again. Anyway, France is so full of forgotten mines and unexploded ordnance that they still pull thousands of pounds of metal out of the ground in what they call their annual iron harvest. It's been nearly a century since the events of WWII, yet every couple of years some kid steps on a landmine somewhere or some construction crew uncovers an unexploded artillery shell or some farmer hits something with a plow. If it had to be one particular form of the invention though, cluster bombs, they may detonate the cluster at first that you see, but I seem to remember it working out on average around for every 2 detonations, 3 remain unexploded, effectively mining an area indiscriminately with a single airstrike. There are no warning signs as these aren't conventional minefields and there is no safe route of passage for anyone because guess what? No one knows quite where the unexploded ordnance planted itself, not even the people who put it there, with a lot of these locations going forgotten until someone treads on a piece, usually a civilian because people tend not to take the same precautions in their own home than someone who sees everything around them as the battlefield, where anything and anyone could be out to get them. Give weapons like that to countries that have no moral objection to performing double-tap strikes on responding paramedics, fire rescue and humanitarians, which they do on the regular, and you have one of humanity's greatest mistakes. Landmines are terrible, even though they're so bad only one kind of them is banned through international treaty that are plastic landmines. I tell you they're the worst kind. They cannot be dug out after war because they don't get detected by metal detector. They have already been used during war causing those grounds to become permanently hazardous. And you know what, there is no guarantee actually that a country is not still collecting or making them or won't use them again because we all know how weak international law is. There is precisely one case where landmines have been unintentionally good. Falkland Islands penguin habitats have been protected by the mines the Argentines planted during the 1982 war. The penguins aren't heavy enough to set off the mines, so their habitat has been undisturbed and there has not been an effort to defuse the mines because the Falkland population already knows to avoid the area. Autoplay videos, especially in non-video streaming websites, nobody asked for them. Yet so much work is getting put into making it a web standard. Just fucking stop. Edit. Thanks for the responses. Yes, I'm aware that there's ways to block it. And I guess, thank God there's a standard. Because it can make it easier to block. The key point is that nobody asked for videos to play in the background of news sites. So why does it exist? Edit 2. Wow, this blew up. Please don't spend any money on fake Reddit metal. Go ahead and donate it to a worthwhile charity instead. This seems to be the approach for a typical news site. I'm interested in reading maybe 1-2K of text. The page takes forever to load because in addition to the dozen or so images that have nothing to do with the news story, it also autoplays a freaking video that is also unrelated, and it follows me down. I'm trying to scroll, so I click the video to pause it and then have to find the teeny X to close it so I can read it on mobile. Scroll down a bit more to read and a full page covering ad pops up asking me to subscribe to the Potent Gazette for $2 a week. I just came here to read that one news story. Jesus. And you wonder why no one reads the links here? I work as an asbestos analyst in the UK and I wouldn't overly worry about popcorn ceilings, textured coating. Yes, you can get a fiber release but you would have to grind down the paint to get the asbestos out and then breathe it in, and even then it's classed as low risk. Not trying to downplay it, but asbestos insulation boards, pipe insulation or spray coating are far worse in terms of fiber release if damaged or not encapsulated. Planned obsolescence. I remember when things were built to last and I'm only in my 20s. Edit. Lots of great insight and points to consider. I'm sure there's a lot of different factors that go into making a product, though, I would be surprised if it didn't get considered when trying to maximize profitability. Think about it. Why make something built to last when you can incentivize the customer to move on to your newest product? For example, there was the whole debacle with Apple slowing down older phones even though they were perfectly capable of running newer software. I think it's always worse for new products. When phones came out, there was an extremely fast improvement cycle, making smartphones much better year over year. Older models got quickly outpaced by the development of software that was leveraging the latest specs. Nowadays is stable. Apps aren't making as dramatic changes. The next product subject to rapid changes will be electric cars. They are still luxury now because companies don't have enough capacity to produce batteries in masses yet, but are investing massively to be in position to put them in every car. Once battery production capacity won't be the challenge, then you'll have huge competition on technical improvements that will make earlier models obsolete. If you're referring to appliances, the main issue is people don't care about anything but price and looks. So companies who put everything into the fancy doors, and replace the internals by cheap components end up with a better price, and push other competing quality products out of the market. We bought an e-washer a couple of years ago that you could connect to Wi-Fi and it would send you emails. Was kind cool at first. After every load it would send my wife an email saying your laundry is done and you saved 7 cents worth of water. Never mind the heat detergent was triple the price. Then it started sending about 30 emails every time you turned it on, including ads for other washing machines. We just bought one. Why would we be in the market for another one? Put up with that shit for 3 days, then disable the feature. My wife and I recently replaced our old washer with a Speed Queen, probably what you see in a college dorm or laundromat. Reviews raved about how rugged they were, how easy they were to work on, and how long they lasted. A few dinged them for their old-style appearance, chunky knobs, and lack of internet connectivity. Oh, those are pluses. Edit. I will say that I understand the utility of wanting an internet-enabled washer/dryer/dishwasher. And there's definitely some reverse snobbery in my preferences. My 25-year-old Jeep isn't actually more reliable than any number of newer cars. Say you've just come in from work and you want to throw your clothes in the wash, but you don't want it to start until after you've had your shower. Or, perhaps, you want to load your dishwasher after dinner, but have it wait to run until 1 a.m. because you're on a plan where you pay less for electricity at night. It just seems that most of the use cases could be served by a cheap, simple delay timer. The U.S. military is now developing and open-sourcing deepfake detection algorithms. They know that one of the biggest threats to the U.S. is a plant of fake video which will sway a pretty huge chunk of the population to support a spy candidate, or people attack a military base because someone created a fake video showing a bunch of children being dissected there. Hell, even with detectors, if you create a fake video showing a person killing a baby and a politician in it is someone they don't like, at least 20% of the population will believe it. I'm a bit unsure of how good an idea the OSing is due to GAN deployment, but at least for now, it's a good idea. I agree. I am happy I went through my teens without it. I made mistakes that I don't want to see or hear about again. I don't want photos of me for anyone to see. I miss being private. Hate campaigns made over false accusations. Pressure for people to be of a certain standard. Being a teen is hard enough without all this added. Only reason I enjoy Reddit is because no one knows it's me. No pressure. No reminders of anything. No watching people in their made-up lives. Napalm, cluster bombs and sarin gas. Napalm is very hard to put out, famously used by the USA in the Pacific Theater. Cluster bombs are like mines because most don't explode, famously used by the USA in the fight against communism. Sarin gas cause a lot of suffering before death, famously used in the Tokyo subway sarin attack. My wife's boss is pushing for their work week which went to 4/10 to be reset to 5 BC. Productivity is down. Productivity is down, specifically BC. The boss stopped doing their portion of the job and now there aren't extra people around to pick up his slack.